Let's talk about this week for a minute. Guy walks into a bank and says, "My daughter has cancer," and robs the bank to try to pay for the cancer treatments. A Missouri State Trooper is driving down the road, pulls over a car, and gets shot. Down in Harris County, Texas, a county sheriff pulls into a gas station to fill up his police cruiser, and somebody stands there and shoots him and kills him. Down in north of New Orleans, you have another police officer that pulls over a car and is killed on the traffic stop. And probably the one event that we've heard the most about deals with a TV reporter and her cameraman down in Roanoke, Virginia. She's standing there interviewing the president of the Chamber of Commerce and gets gunned down. So does her cameraman. A few weeks ago, about a month ago, we had an incident in Charleston, South Carolina at Mother Emanuel Episcopal Church. 9 people were killed at a Bible study. The person who shoots the 2 TV reporters says he was upset because of what happened at Mother Emanuel Church. So he chose to shoot the reporter and her cameraman. Just this week in Grand Rapids, 2 young people are walking down Bates. One of them gets shot. People are sitting on their front porch over on Carrier, and one gets shot. And you're wondering, what am I talking about all of these things for? Because this gospel tells me that we have choices in this world. We can take in what some people say is bad music. We can take in bad news. We can process things in many different ways. But the gospel tells us it's how we respond, what comes out of us, that gives us a problem, that defiles us. Sometimes I wish that instead of having written gospels, we had digital video, capabilities 2,000 years ago. I would love to hear Jesus say to Peter, "Get behind me, Satan." How did he say that? What was his tone of voice? He sits down on a mountainside. We hear that there's 5,000 people and he wants to begin to teach. What was his tone of voice then? I'll bet it was a little different than when he said, "Get behind me, Satan." But wouldn't you love to hear him say to the Pharisees, "Listen to me, all of you, and understand"? What was his tone at that point? You're going to pick on me because my disciples didn't wash their hands? Where did I ever tell you that they had to wash their hands? Oh, I know. That was in one of them crazy rules that you made up. Pharisees, as we know, lived by, as Father Jim sometimes reminds us, 600 to 900 laws, which none of them came from Scripture. But there was little laws about everything you did. You know, there were laws about the size of the jar that had to sit outside the house so that you could be washed to come in the house. And did you know that to wash, well, we're worried about these people washing their hands before a dinner. One description of that is that you had to take your hand and hold it up. And you had to take about half of an eggshell, fill it with water, and that had to get you all clean because you had to wash that hand. And then you had to do it the other way so that your hands were clean. And all of it was cleaned with this half an eggshell cup of amount of water. There wasn't wash your hands for 20 seconds under the hot water with soap and water and all that stuff. And I love that description because I really wonder when I'm out playing in my, flower bed, then I'm cutting grass, and I want to go in and have a sandwich. I wonder what that half of an eggshell of water would do to clean my hands. What difference does it make? You must understand this, my beloved. Let everyone be quick to listen, slow to speak, slow to anger. For your anger does not produce God's righteousness. The events of this week, choices. I wonder what they might have looked like had somebody been a little slower to anger. I wonder sometimes what they would look like. We talk about sometimes gun control, and I'm not getting into gun control, believe me. But if we took away all the guns, sometimes it seems to me that those who want to make bad choices will make bad choices. And I think that this week is an example of that. Just for the sheer thrill of it, walking down the street, you get shot in the leg. Grand Rapids, Michigan. Choices. I ask you, what tone would his voice have had? How did he say? Listen to me, all of you. Understand that there is nothing outside a person that by going in can defile, but the things that come out are what defile. And then we skip a couple verses. But these are what those verses that we skip in today's gospel reading say. And I think there's a lot of truth in this. I'm looking now at Mark chapter 7. I'm going to go to verse 18 through 20, where in our lessons, as they were, we went 14, 15, then we skipped to 21. And he said to them, "Then are you also without understanding? Do you not see that whatever goes into a man from outside cannot defile him? Since it enters not his heart, but his stomach. He said it's what comes out of a man that can defile him. He's again talking about the heart. I've asked you, I've said to you many times when I've had the chance to share my thoughts on what a gospel or what our readings for the day are, whether you want to call it a homily, a reflection, sermon, whatever. That one of the things I look differently at our readings than Father Jim may do is I, as a deacon, am always tasked to find what are we called to do. If you want, as I've said also many times, if you want to get into deep theology over our readings, call a priest. But a deacon is supposed to look at them a little differently. What are we being called to do? What are we being asked to do out of our readings today? Number one, I would think it would mean that we slow down and consider the choices that we're going to make. Got a lot of youngsters that are going to start school here very shortly. And they're going to get picked on and they're going to get bullied and, you know, they're not going to have their homework done when they're supposed to. And are we going to get mad at them as adults? Not that we haven't ever done that before. You know, of course my homework was always done on time. I never had to get told I couldn't go out on a weekend because of homework. Do we get mad, and how do we respond in loving ways to teach our youngsters that bullying is not something they have to put up with? And that they have to have enough confidence in teachers and parents to tell them what's going on. The events of this week, with the choices that were made, how different this week may have been had other choices been made. Those choices that we are reminded about in our first reading. Those choices that were different than the responses that came out. In the Song of Solomon, when we read about the fig tree puts forth its figs, and the vines are in blossom. You know another word for all of those words? Resurrection moments. We need sometimes to experience death in ourselves to the things that we think and the things we do in order to rise like the fig tree and blossom. And we do that as we're reminded in the letter of James that religion, I have trouble with that word. You know, we sometimes think religion is the church. Religion, to me, is a set of beliefs and how we react to them. And it comes in many different fashions. But he says, religion that is pure and undefiled before God is this: to care for the orphans, the widows in their distress, and to keep oneself unstained by the world. What are we called to do? To love our neighbors as ourselves, to seek and serve Christ in all persons. All persons. And there's another example of it right there. The choices that we make are the choice to love, the choice to serve. We can hear again I said before, we can hear all of the music. We can read and watch the news. And we can get upset with it or we can get happy with it. The choice is ours. And I think that's what he is asking us to make good choices in this reading for today.